Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to video game news for Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. Starting a little bit earlier today, my schedule, I'm going to shift it around, so there may be some times in the next few streams that I stream later in the evening instead of in the morning. But then we'll strive back for more consistency in the foreseeable future, near future. Let's see, do we have even enough gems to buy new wallpaper? Yes. Are we getting prompted to actually use that new wallpaper? No. So, yeah, Master Tool really hasn't improved anything. And there's 4 days left on the Dual Pass, and I have not played even once this Dual Pass season, which is, I believe, somewhere between 70 and 90 days. So yeah, I definitely am out of the business of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. I am playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon the trading card game on my phone though, now, and playing that a little bit more. I don't think I'm going to get too deep into it, but then there is that possibility, certainly, that it could just update the app quite a bit and have more daily quests and things like that that would require more of my time. Games tend to expand in that direction, giving you more to do, and I will fully admit that the Pokemon trading card game right now is lackluster in actually pushing the player to play more than 1 or 2 games of the trading card game in even a day. Half-Life 2 here we can see has bumped up, and this is something that certainly won't show up on my chart unless people just start playing Half-Life 2 consistently due to this new update for months and months and months. Which, yeah, it'll be weird if Half-Life 2 all of a sudden gets some kind of game award. Binding of Isaac Rebirth, I think, is getting a bit of a bump too, because either the online is about out or is already out, which that deserves to get a big update, big bump with such a major update. Just adding online playing, proper online playing, which, in fairness, there's been mods or ways to play online for years now, but it just wasn't official and it wasn't done particularly well. I'm still mostly doing house cleaning, so just a lot of physical activity overall is being spent, and a lot of time management is being spent, and my experience with Tetris is not high enough, frankly, to figure it out. So in a lot of ways it feels like there's been a bit of a recursion where I'm starting to move stuff back into a room that I emptied, which is an easy starting point, certainly, is just to empty out a room, but then realizing, oh, I don't have actually enough room to do this, I started to even clean out my garage, which is the smart move, really, is to get as much as possible in a reasonable, accessible way put into a garage, and then that will properly empty out a full room. But yeah, it is certainly going around in circles. I also have begun setting up a Moto Stylus G, I think it's called a Moto G Stylus 2024 5G cell phone, going from Samsung to this newer Android 14 phone. Seems to be, to me, to have been almost the exact same process as far as the way you would move an old Samsung to a new Samsung with Smart Switch. So it seems to me like Android in general probably has fixed the update and transfer system pretty well. That being said, there's still this issue in which you have to go into every single app because there's zero chance that every single app will be logged in, and you just got to make sure it actually transferred the data over. And as you get more and more apps, potentially, that certainly could be a growing hassle. My favorite app to look at RSS feeds and podcast, which it does both, Beyond Pod, is so incredibly old and just not even made and published on the Google Play Store anymore that it didn't transfer over. And I could possibly go through the hassle of using a ADB console command on a computer to force the app to install onto Android 14, but yeah, you can't just download the APK and install it anymore. It's too old. Which, in fairness, Android 14 and Android in general has just added so many extra layers of privacy and security features, and there are just things that Android has been right about, in my opinion, as far as forcing the user to do things a little bit differently. Although I think there are some visual things in particular that they're too ambitious with, and forcing the user to deal with that is kind of a problem. There is weirdness in just kind of like the icon set of the Wi-Fi and the power, and that it is just like a solid wave fan instead of having waves in it and lines in it, and that feels a little weird. This new device, compared to my old device, seems to connect to the networks faster, and maybe even handles speed a little bit better, but I probably would never be able to tell. The biggest issue, I would say, so far that I've run into is that the back button on the three buttons at the bottom is on the left side, and I like it on the right side, and it seems like there's no way in the newest version of the Moto Android desktop or Android operating system fork, there's no way to swap it back. I'll have to do some more research and see if maybe there's a way to force that back, but yeah, it's crazy that there isn't an option to do that, but there isn't. And I would say, well, I'm fairly used to the Samsung One UI user interface. Moto's looks about the same, but their launcher is not good enough. So immediately I installed Nova Launcher. There's just a limited number of features there. So software wise, I would say, having played with it really just for a few hours yesterday, it looks like it's a pretty good phone. I think processing wise and game wise, I will probably never try to play a game that is actually that demanding on my phone, so I think the games that I do play will run perfectly fine, and certainly they are labeled specifically as games, so that turns on a overclocking function in Android built into almost all the operating systems, to just turn up the CPUs to much higher amounts than they normally run at. Which, yeah, there is underlying a big split there between almost every other program being low power and trying to save batteries, and then games that are gonna boost up the CPU to on a phone. Now, hardware wise is the reason why I bought the Moto stylus. Now, I don't particularly care about the stylus. I played with it for a little bit. It's kind of a cool thought, certainly if you want it. The screen is super long, and if you don't get the sizing right, which I'd say there's room in the software for more tweaking on that too, I could see where stylus might be a little bit helpful. But it also has a 3.5mm mini stereo jack on it, It can, when something is plugged into that, act as a FM radio. The app is installed in the United States version. It's not being blocked, at least in the unlocked United States version I got. It has a micro SD card slot or a dual SIM, and those two factors were just not being added to Samsung phones, and that's why I wanted to swap over. Is that I wanted to have the possibility of expanding the internal storage. I wanted to have the possibility of plugging in a headphone jack, even if I never really am going to do it. And the stylus is a nice little extra. It has an interesting kind of textured, almost felt like backing to it, but I'm going to put it in a case, so that won't be a big issue. It has wireless charging. I haven't tested that yet. It has higher wattage charging, which it calls turbocharge, which seems to charge up just fine. It has a 50 megapixel camera. It seems like it has only really 2 cameras though, but that's kind of all you need too, is kind of a zoom lens for far away and a somewhat close lens. It doesn't have an infrared blaster, which I don't think any phone is ever going to have that in the future. It does have a front-facing camera. It does have a fingerprint scanner, although I don't recommend people actually use fingerprint scanners or enable that at all in the United States, in particular the way the law is written. You don't have legal protections that protect you from having someone take your fingerprint and put it on a phone, or force your thumb to force your finger to touch the phone and unlock it. So yeah, I'm not quite ready to 100% suggest that it is a good option. I can say the price seems to be much better. I think I paid like $300 for it, where I was paying $500 to $600, and it was creeping up for Samsung phones. Yeah, and so yeah, that's very limited as far as its connectivity to video games. So let's move on. Take a look at our chart. I am kind of trying to rush today also, and yeah, it would be a long time before we saw Half-Life 2 creep up here into it. It would almost have to be a year that people were playing Half-Life 2 quite a bit, which at some point after December 31st, it is going to probably be worth it to, well, I think I've already programmed it to automatically start to drop things, the data sets, before a year. That way there will be some potential refresh, as things that might be at the 10th spot on the top 100 may still be getting points. But I don't know how many games are actually like that would have been in the top 25 or so, and now is barely hanging on in the 10th spot. Games tend to either stick around forever or disappear completely from the top 100. We don't have the cooking sale going on Steam. I imagine they are just having a bit of a buffer here before the Black Friday sale, Fall Festival sale, whatever they want to call it. Disney Dreamlight Valley, I'd kind of forgotten that even exists. It does definitely feel like there is a problem with Disney properties, and that they are just not getting promoted and pushed well enough. Now, I don't have the Disney Channel or Disney Plus, so maybe when you launch into those apps, there's a commercial here and there that promotes it, but I kind of think Disney Plus doesn't have commercials. So yeah, Disney's just not really promoting any video game spin-off at all, and the video games seem to probably spend all of their money just getting the license and then don't have enough promotion budget. Of course, Dreamlight Valley had some real problems as far as being a I forgot the name of the game. Well, being a game that's focused towards adults, let me say that, and not really trying to target kids at all, and barely having that much to do other than being a, I keep wanting to say Animal Farm, a decoration game is all it really is. You do little activities, you get currency, you get little decorations and outfits. Yep. And I imagine these new and trending aren't changing around too much, although something about the Stalker series is getting a push, I think because it came to PlayStation, which is interesting that games might come to the PlayStation or some other platform, and that might just remind people on PC to play it instead. I also saw that there was an article about a Steam Controller 2 being just about to be developed, so let's rush into the articles and see what that's all about. That would be interesting, although not super surprising. Like, at some level, yeah, it does kind of make sense to have Steam controllers. They maybe have touchpads like the Steam Deck and have about the same layout as the Steam Deck, or a improved experiment on a layout, because certainly there is going to be a level of gamer that would like to in the future install SteamOS on their pre-built computer, and then they would like a controller that is more standard. And sticking with the Xbox layout and the Xbox controllers is not something that really needs to happen, particularly if the Steam controller is potentially cheaper than what Xbox controllers are going to get to, or PlayStation controllers. Yeah, PlayStation controller support is still, while it's getting improved on PC, it's still very lackluster as far as the tilt and gyro functionalities. It's probably asking too much, but I'd like to see a controller that could transform like a transformer into a light gun zapper. But almost certainly, if you tried to do any transforming or even slightly modifiable controller, it would lose its stability and sturdiness very quickly. And that's about the only different types of controller that I would want. Whereas when you start to get into the wide variety of different types of controllers, fight sticks, and well, it'd be flight yokes and driving wheels. Also, you have 4 very unique, very different types of controllers there, and it's highly unlikely you could convert a regular controller into a flight yoke or a driving wheel. Okay, Dragon Quest, according to Video Games Chronicles, Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake producer wants Final Fantasy 6 to get the HD 2D treatment. Says Final Fantasy 6 was used as a reference when creating the HD 2D style, which seems almost backwards to say then, if we use this game as a reference to create the HD 2D style, why does the game that we used as a reference need that remake? Particularly, I'm not super impressed with what I've seen as far as the HD 2D remakes, but I think they probably are better than the Final Fantasy remakes. And I think there is just certainly, as a Westerner who didn't play any of the early Final Fantasy games or Dragon Quest games, I'm just in a non-nostalgic position, so I'm not really interested in playing any of those games in the first place. Unknown 9 Awakening developer Reflector Entertainment has suffered layoffs. Several developers have announced they have been released from the company. What gets me about this is you just don't recognize this game, and it's not been out that long. Yeah, I would assume it hadn't sold particularly well. FromSoft's parent company, Kadokawa, confirms that Sony has sent it a letter of intent to acquire it. Sony is in discussions to acquire the parent company behind Elden Ring, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, and more. This is seemingly tit for tat for the acquisitions that Microsoft has done, and certainly echoes to me that Sony themselves doesn't have a lot of confidence in its current first-party developers and doesn't really have any better idea than spending money to acquire other companies. I imagine for the end user and the gamers, this is not good things. Like most acquisitions are not good things for the end user, and that you can expect there's potentially not going to be a third Elden Ring or a third Dragon Ball Sparking Zero if this actually happens. Yeah, this is another one of those cases also where the global competitive stage, I think, hurts artistic companies in particular, where it would make a lot more sense for Kadokawa and small companies to stay more independent so they can go in different directions and try different things, whereas Sony is just going to push them to probably make Elden Ring games and whatever makes the most money and make their games as bland and broadly appealing as possible. There definitely is an argument for limiting the size of companies too to prevent that. Of course, that is unlikely to happen. Although I could see in Japan there being more of a movement for that. There's plenty of small bars that have been around for 100 years in Japan that have been run by families, and spas, onsens throughout Japan that have been run by families for generations. It's probably uniquely a video game thing in Japan, since those are relatively newer companies where mergers and acquisitions start to make sense, start to happen more. There's a quote here: "We're really sorry. Flight Sim 2024 head acknowledges launch login issues. Many players were unable to start the game on release day, and while others had missing aircraft." Final Fantasy XIV Mobile has been announced. It's being developed by the team behind PUBG Mobile. Which I don't know if that really tells you too much. I'd assume Final Fantasy XIV is a very different game than PUBG is. I believe, unless I'm remembering this, is that Final Fantasy XIV is the online MMO, or one of them. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Which, yeah, we haven't seen a lot of progress as far as online MMOs moving to mobile, where it kind of would make a lot of sense, certainly. Yeah, it is kind of crazy that World of Warcraft doesn't have a mobile client, and that you can't grind and play that game, particularly with the visuals of World of Warcraft Classic. You know, there literally is no need for that. They could just have World of Warcraft Online being streamed, the video and inputs being streamed to you via a mobile client, and it probably would work just fine. The PlayStation Portal is getting cloud streaming today. It didn't have it until now? What in the world were you doing? Oh, so I guess that means that up until this point, this useless bit of tat has been only able to stream inside your house. And, well, I guess that makes it a little bit more useful. It's still not a good piece of equipment for the price. Yeah. Let's see. A new trailer for Minecraft live action movie has been released. The Minecraft movie has gotten a second trailer. That's the same thing as the first title. Seems like Video Games Chronicles bends over backwards to have two headlines. I don't see a need to really watch this trailer, but I imagine even now, if it is particularly cringy, people won't react as much as they did the first time. I imagine a lot of people are already going to be just checked out on this movie, and I imagine this movie is targeting a young audience that may or may not be there, so trailers aren't likely to actually affect that audience. Stellar Blade's photo mode update has been released early. Interesting. A major Stellar Blade update was launched a day ahead of schedule. Man, these headlines, repetitive headlines, wasting people's time. I did tweak the video settings a lot, and so far we haven't had any drop frames, so hopefully that the visuals will look better today than they did yesterday, or last stream, not yesterday. I'm still running at a variable frame rate, and the kilobits per second is still fairly low at 600 kilobits per second, but yeah, if I can turn up the graphics quite a bit and get it looking good each time, that should be fine. I might need to turn up the graphics even more. I might just be having to tweak all the settings. Hopefully everything's fixed now. Probably not, let's be honest. Let's see, Black Ops 6 owners will get a 30% XP boost in Warzone, cross-promotional thing. Bloober Team is working on a Silent Hill 2 PS5 Pro graphical issues. Silent Hill 2 in particular was one of the games that has been criticized for looking worse, or Sony's PS5 Pro has been more criticized for making the game look worse than it should for PS5 Pro. Which, yeah, it really hurts your sales pitch of buying a PS5 Pro when this and the Star Wars game, what is it? Outlaw? I think might be the name of it. It's either Star Wars Outlaw or Star Wars Rebel. I think it's Star Wars Outlaw. But yeah, both of those games are Unreal Engine 4 games, and so I think they probably are not built with PS5 Pro graphical upgrades in mind, or any kind of graphical upgrades in mind. And so, yeah, DFRetro pointing out a huge amount of visual issues that really shouldn't be there, in my opinion. Like, why even put out an upgraded, patched version instead of just saying this game just doesn't support the graphical updates, and instead we'll just have the list be 2 games shorter of what has been upgraded. I haven't heard any complaints about any of the other games of that initial list. Not that there was that many games on that initial list for the PS5 Pro graphical upgrade. November's PlayStation Plus game catalog and classic titles are now live. 17 games have been added. Let's see. There was a time very early on where these kinds of lists would have been new and exciting, but that time surely has passed now, and I think very few people even care about these lists, even see these lists, are going out of their way to play these old games. Even kids. Yeah, I could kind of see kids maybe being interested in it, but then most of the games are rated T for teen or M for mature, so it doesn't work in that concept either. So you would just have to be kind of broke and paying for the subscription, or like to bounce around a lot more than I think gamers do. I just don't think gamers bounce around that much. I am probably one of the type of gamers that bounces around the most, and that's because I'm making YouTube content to play single player games though, and go through them once and move on. And I do that at a higher rate because I'm focusing all my time and extra attention to it, whereas most people aren't. It is still, I think, very much the case where your average gamer is buying 2 to 3 games a year and playing them throughout the course of those years. The new Xbox Game Pass titles for console, PC, and cloud have also been announced. This is a fairly gruesome screenshot they've chosen. I assume that's from Stalker 2. And there's definitely games like Conan Exiles that I thought I might want to play at some point, but I don't think they're relevant enough to really justify playing, and I wasn't that excited about playing them. Let's see. Control 2 will be an action RPG, Remedy says. Alan Wake has also sold over 1.8 million units. Okay. Now, here's my question. Was Control 1 not an action RPG? It kind of was. Your main gameplay mechanic was action. You were running around shooting people. I think you'd call that action instead of strategy, where the game would pause and you would select an attack. It didn't work that way. And you had skill points that you collected, and the XP you were collecting. And so there was a very limited role-playing element to Control 1, and that you would unlock new abilities and upgrade damage and on your weapon. So it's almost saying nothing, unless what they really mean here is that they're going to go very heavy into something that feels like a role-playing game with action. And yeah, but it would be a fairly different experience if it played like a Skyrim game, which they're probably not going in that direction. That's a little crazy. But yeah, I just don't know if that really means anything. This is probably just a continuing smart move by Remedy Entertainment, in that they have convinced mainstream video game journalists at least to continue to talk about Control and Alan Wake and make their company seem like it's a bigger, more relevant company than it probably is. They are slowly nudging the hype train down the track every couple weeks, every couple months, so that there is more love for Remedy than probably there should be. Let's see. Pokemon the trading card game Pocket has reportedly passed 120 million in earnings. It's made massive profits in just over 2 weeks since launch. I could certainly see that. I could see kids buying card packs like crazy, even though I don't think it's even going to help you that much. I think the next expansion that comes out would probably be where you would want to spend money, if you were going to spend money anyways, to get an early advantage with new cards. There's only slightly over 250 Pokemon cards in this game, but it is a sharp contrast, I think, from the previous Pokemon trading card game, which clearly is not popular or worth even mentioning these days. I just wish this was more of a game and had a little bit more to do. Let's see. PlayStation Studios has confirmed its new head of mobile, Oliver Courtemarche, has been the co-head since June of 2023. So, he is now the full head of mobile. That is a very weird thing to do, to have somebody be a co-head or have somebody not have the title for over a year and then finally promote them to the title. It shows a lack of confidence, a lack of appreciation. That being said, I don't think I have any other opinions on PlayStation Mobile. I don't think they've really done anything yet to comment on, so yeah. It's kind of a weird situation there where we'll see if PlayStation ever has more of a mobile presence, in the same way we'll see if Nintendo ever has a mobile presence. I did have a thought as far as the Pokemon trading card game. It might be an interesting backdoor if they went in this direction to print on demand services. If all of a sudden you could pay a premium, let's say minimum $5, possibly close to $100, to print out cards that you had gotten fit digitally in the card game and have them mailed to you. That could revolutionize the way real world trading card games work. Of course, that would open the door rife with cheating, but in the end, I think there's probably a lot of that kind of cheating already, where people are making fake cards or proxy cards, which are not intended to be counterfeit, but just used instead of using the real cards. But yeah, a print-on-demand service cuts out the middleman for every comic book, card shop, Walmart, Target that exists, while it would make massive profits for the Pokemon company just mailing things directly. In that, also, it's worth pointing out that Magic the Gathering has already gone in those directions, and it clearly has made some massive profits for them, despite angering the player base quite a bit. It would also eliminate the randomization element of card packs to some extent, but that's not something you would want to rely on if you're trying to cut out the middleman anyways. Of course, this is all just speculation on my part. There's been no evidence that that's really happened or is going to happen. Moving on to the Gamatsu news. Bushiroad Games and Hakami have announced a guild management RPG progression RPG called Progress Orders for Switch and PC. I don't know why RPG is capitalized there. I guess just because it's in the initials. But that certainly made it hard to read. They've got just a few pictures so far. Bandai Namco Online is being absorbed by Bandai Namco Entertainment. So you can see how there's consolidation and acquisitions happening in Japan. Japan just announced its fourth, I think, quarter of trade deficits on a global scale. So its economy is not doing particularly well. I also could see there not really being a need to have a Bandai Namco Online as a separate entity. And it is worth pointing out that Japanese companies have in the past been very overly happy to have subsidiaries instead of having one big corporation, as a way of avoiding risk and potentially running different companies into the ground and sending all the profit to the head company while leaving all the debt with the subsidiary. Bandai Namco Online was established in 2009, and it released Gundam Evolution, Blue Protocol. Gundam Evolution is since shut down, and Blue Protocol will shut down on January 18th, 2025. So yeah, it looks like it kind of had run its course. Let's see, Puglia Magica Modica Magica, Puglia Magi Modica Magica Magi Exedra has been delayed to spring of 2025. It would have been a free-to-play RPG game. I haven't heard of any of the Puglia Magica Modica Magi Modica Magica series as far as the anime series. I haven't seen anything new coming out from that series. And it's always worth pointing out that despite the visuals of the Moe cute bright pink color palette, this series is a incredibly dark series that is not for kids, to put it the least. Let's see. Shiren the Wanderer, the mystery dungeon of Serpent Coil Island, is coming to PC this winter. Okay. Gigabash DLC Ultraman Rising launches November 28th. I had forgotten about Gigabash, which I guess is the slight argument for DLC. Kind of would like to see if this game is on Steam and how well it's being received. Do they have a link to Steam? If they did, my macro didn't find it. Yeah, there is a link. I think that was my new phone. Still, I'm trying different things there where the notifications more individually are going to try and be muted instead of just being in do not disturb mode the whole time. And because it's a different manufacturer's phone, the dings and notifications are different and the ringers are different. And yeah, I'm trying to not customize things unless absolutely necessary. Anyways, my answer was, my question was answered here. Gigabash is rated very positively. It's already on my wish list. The only thing I guess to ask here is, why did this Steam link not work to open? And I'll investigate that later. Tokyo Psychodemic launches November 28th in the West. It first launched on May 30th in Japan. It's a forensic investigation simulation game. That's an interesting descriptor. That being said, while it is on my follow list, it is only 24% positive, which is a massive negative amount, and English language is not supported, so I really am just going to take it off the follow list at this point. Let's see. Yeah, there's only one language. Let's see if we go negative here, remove the Your Language tab, then click the Translate button. Korean language is bad apparently. UI user interface is bad apparently. It's not a mystery game, but an adult ADV. I don't know what that means, really. Story is terrible, apparently. So it doesn't even seem like there's consistent problems. It does just seem like it is all over the place. Yeah. These screenshots certainly aren't showing quite very much. So that's very believable that it isn't much of a game. I wonder if there isn't a possibility that some game like this, very possibly not this game, might just be very poorly written or translated, and in the translation, if they threw out the original translation and started over, if they threw out the original intent even and started over, maybe there would be a better game there. 999 comes to mind as far as that story is crazy and silly, and it's not written great, but there was just enough of a fandom and enough of a passion there to make it become a cult hit. But for every one thing that is a cult hit, there are many things that aren't and are just total failures. Final Fantasy XIV Mobile being announced for iOS and Android is a thing. Oh, I should also mention Chrome OS apparently has been planned to be phased out for a while, but Google has come out and said specifically that that they plan on getting rid of Chrome OS and replacing it with full Android, which frankly made a lot. It made no sense for Chrome OS to be built in the first place. I think it really was just a early adopters quick and easy way of, let's make these ultra low powered weak laptops run something. But yeah, if the future path of schools in the United States is to give out Chromebooks, well, Chromebooks are going away, and so then Android books and Android tablets are going to appear, and they may be locked down and look a lot like Chrome OS. This is also certainly a testament to the fact that Android, even at version 14, has just barely gotten to the point where it can have a desktop mode that makes sense, instead of being designed really just for phones and maybe tablets. That is another issue with my new phone being so much longer, is when I open like YouTube in the portrait mode, there's less than half of the top of the screen actually has the video on it. The ratio feels off, so you're gonna really want to rotate the screen. The audio, by the way, is much better. It has like Dolby Atmos built into it and is doing automatic adjustments there. My previous phone was the Samsung S21 FE, and yeah, it's just not getting updates anymore. So that was the main reason. I was just like, I don't think I'm even getting security updates at this point. And I did also, let's reboot my computer to get a prompt that says Windows 10 is ending. Be prepared for Windows 10 ending. So it does seem like it's going to just get more and more obnoxious, and there is going to just be a point where you're no longer going to be able to avoid it. They may even straight up try and cripple Windows 10. Let's see. Moving on. I'm still trying to kind of rush here. Meg's Monster DLC Lost Memories has been announced. I don't recognize this game. Meg's Monster, though. It says it's PC. Interesting. So once again, something is getting missed here. Where these pages, something's not scrolling down low enough or something to find the Steam links, because there's definitely ones that aren't being opened that have the word Steam in them. It might even be a capitalization issue, because I ran into that same problem before. The Steam Portal system update launches today with cloud streaming beta and audio refinements. I imagine there's so few people that have this for it to really matter. Although we are in a very different position, because, yeah, the Virtual Boy, for instance, came and went like a flash as far as major failures go. And technology that has any kind of funding behind it nowadays just doesn't disappear like that. You get pushing and promotion for things, at least until they clear out that first production run. Which I wouldn't be surprised if production runs demand way more units to be made than the number of Virtual Boys that were made in the past. But yeah, this also may just be a case of Sony being unwilling to cede failure and admit defeat on the PlayStation Portal. Sony, in particular, the parent company, may just really want new physical devices, because that has been their history, making TVs and making Walkmans and CD players and tape players and things like that, and maybe they just can't get past what Sony used to be to recognize what Sony is today, which is a much smaller company that makes movies and has a video game division that makes video game consoles. The game On Your Tail has been delayed to December 16th for PC, February 2025 for Switch. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is coming to the PS4 and 5 on December 3rd. I always think this game is connected to the Cat Lady series. It sounds and looks like it would be connected to the Cat Lady series, but it isn't in any way. I think in particular the reason for that is that there is a game just called Lorelei in the Cat Lady series, which you'll definitely recognize that is not how the recommendations engines work on Steam. There is no name connections or similarity there. So yeah, you can't really create a name confusion product and have it help you, even though people still do that. This is overwhelmingly positive overall, though, so I can go ahead and put it on my wish list. Does look weird, certainly. I also heard a story, and I don't know if I heard it correctly, where I don't know if it was the United States or the European Union or somebody else has full-on told Google that they have to separate Chrome from Google and break apart the company. And I imagine that won't happen anytime soon, though, and they would just fight it in court forever. But yeah, that would be a big change, certainly. It is, I think, though, worth pointing out that I'm not sure how effective those things really are without strict regulation and oversight, which I just don't expect the US government in particular to do. Even decades ago, when they broke up AT&T into becoming AT&T and Verizon, there has never really been any real oversight there. The companies openly collude and openly do shady things. They didn't change their behavior in any way. It would make a lot more sense to either to force out the current people in charge of a company when you enforce such strict action instead of splitting a company in part. Eliminate the board and forbid them from being on the board of either companies, and demand the shareholders vote in some new people, which still probably wouldn't change too much because it's shareholders that want profit over everything else, so they would just vote in new sycophants instead of the old sycophants. But at the very least, that would make a new board that knows they can't do the same things, the exact same things that they've already been caught doing. But yeah, I don't know how much that would really affect video game. It might affect YouTube more, though, video games. The Indie Live Expo, December 7th, is going to showcase over 100 games, including multiple world premieres. Let's see. YIIK, a postmodern RPG, has update YIIKI.V launching December 2nd. This is yet another game that I don't recognize. Let's see. Apparently they don't have a Steam link for it, although I'm pretty sure I have seen this game on Steam now that I look at it more. Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble version 2.0 update launches November 26th alongside DLC characters Godzilla and Hatsune Miku. I have not heard of any feedback at all for Banana Rumble in a very long time. Maybe there was somewhat negative response when it first came out, but I imagine a lot of it is just, it is what it is, and most people know just from the looks of it what it's going to be and whether that's something they want to play. And I imagine the vast majority of people don't want to play it. Sega clearly dropped the ball, come to think of it, by not making Super Monkey Ball a Mario Kart competitor. Make a Super Monkey Ball spin-off called Super Monkey Ball Racer or something, and just rip off Mario Kart as much as you can and keep on doing that. If you could get DLC characters like Godzilla and Hatsune Miku, that would raise its appeal quite a bit. Otherwise it would just be a bunch of monkeys, and I guess you could have like gerbils and squirrels and other animals in balls running around racing each other. And it could certainly have a more pinball feel to it than the Mario Kart games really would have, particularly originally. Yeah, that first Super NES Mario Kart game in particular, if there was a Super Monkey Ball competitor at that time, they could have just been the thorn in the side of Nintendo the whole time. Of course, maybe they didn't really want to be the thorn in the side of Nintendo, although in the Super Nintendo era they definitely did. Yep. That also would have been the era though where Sega was very much trying to target older teens and adults and not kids, and they would have thought of a Super Monkey Ball racing game. If I'm not even sure Super Monkey Ball had been invented at that time. I think it was like Dreamcast when the first Super Monkey Ball game came out. With its 3D visuals, that would have been very appealing at that time. The Indie Game Awards, not to be confused with just the Game Awards, have been set for December 19th. It's hosted by 6-1 Indie, a company I don't recognize. And they have a list of their nominees here, short lists of nominees, which I'm not sure I recognize too many of these. And I'm pretty sure I haven't played any of these. Now, you really would have to specialize and focus on playing just indie games to be a proper judge on that kind of awards. That would be a commitment, certainly. Control 2 will be an action RPG sequel currently in development. And then there's some budgetary numbers here they're talking about on this screenshot. Again, I question if it really is news that say Control 2 will be an action RPG. Even announcing that does give off the feeling that maybe they're going too far in a different direction and the game might just feel very disconnected from the first game. This Firebreak spin-off game in the Control universe might be an indicator of where they might be going and where they might go a little too far if they go in that direction, but it also might be an indicator that they're experimenting or getting it out of their system to have a P versus E shooter, which is how they describe Firebreak, to then turn back to action RPG games. It's interesting, the price point is how they describe this being a AAA game and this being a mid-price game, which, yeah, I wouldn't think mid-price and AAA are on the same scale. I think you'd call it a AA game or a single A game at that point. Rydo says that Sony Group Corporation is in talks to acquire Kadokawa Corporation. Update number 2. We've already seen this to be true. Yeah, all they say, they've received an initial letter of intent. Inherently, this might be more of a hostile takeover than it seems, although at some level almost every takeover is hostile until the price gets set and both sides are somewhat happy. The Game Awards 2024 nominees have been announced, so there's all that talk about DLC and remasters and remake being included. Well, we see any game that actually meets that category of being a DLC or remaster or remakes. Yes, Shadow of the Erd Tree. So they definitely are phrased this and setting it up for Shadow of the Erd Tree to win a lot of these categories, if not Game of the Year. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is also a remake or a remaster. A remaster more than a remake. So you can see there's at least 2 games here that they needed to say that for. I've never heard of this. Neva. Silent Hill 2 is a remaster. Stellar Blade might actually win an award here, but I wouldn't hold my breath for best music and score. And really, best visuals or best art direction should have been nominated for that, I would say. Stellar Blade hurt himself certainly winning any award by being released and published by Sony so early in the year. Audio design, well, I guess is different than scoring music. Then we have voice actors being listed here, which I wish all awards went deeper in that direction, so you weren't just giving awards to voice actors who are the highest level of celebrity of employee in a video game development process, other than perhaps CEOs and game directors who make themselves celebrities. It would be hard to give awards to the best QA team, even, let alone the best QA person, or the best programmer, or the best programming team. But you could certainly rephrase things like best audio design to best audio design team, and then you list the names of the team first. As far as Team Asobi, Treyarch, Square Enix wouldn't tell you who was actually on the audio design team. Of course, most people wouldn't recognize Team Asobi, and so the name of the game being first does make a lot of sense. Best innovation and accessibility, still going down in that direction. Although I have to question what is the elements in each of these games that adds accessibility at all. Then Games for Impact is definitely a giveaway award for who's the most progressive SJW type game. Best ongoing game allows them to give awards to games that actually didn't release in this year, which noticeably a lot of these games either released in the previous years or are just continuing in this year. None of these are like brand new debuts. Well, some of them are. Baldur's Gate 3 is, which it definitely seems like Baldur's Gate 3 is going to get the short end of the stick here for the Game Awards. It'll be interesting to see if Animal Well wins an award, and you see like Video Game Donkey show up on stage, which maybe they'll give the award just to get Video Game Donkey to show up on stage. There's Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. Wow, that must be a much better game than it looks. And then you have Best Independent Game, then you have Best Debut in Indie Game, giving Animal Well a second chance to win. And Best Mobile Game, let's see, Pokemon the Trading Card Game might win there. But yeah, there definitely are companies and games here not being considered, I think, as far as the nominees in general, but particularly in mobile, and really don't care at all about virtual reality, augmented reality games. It does seem to me like there are more categories for this award show, and that's good. Of course, the problem here is that Jeff Keighley runs two different events, and one is basically E3 showing trailers and announcing new games, and it feels and looks and is just too similar even in name to the Game Awards, which are giving out awards for the games that more at the end of the year. And honestly, I'm not sure that the Summer Games Fest isn't really also giving out awards in the same way that the Game Awards happened, and it's just kind of weird to have Jeff Keighley in particular run two different events throughout the course of a year. It's a little too much. But yeah, Stillblade can win for Best Action, so there's a second chance for them, which they still probably won't win anything. And then maybe they're stretching fighting a little bit here, as far as I'm not sure all of these are fighting games. I guess they are. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if Princess Peach Showtime got Best Family, but almost certainly not. It'd be a higher chance that Echoes of Wisdom would win, but almost certainly not. It's almost certainly Astrobot that's going to win that. I imagine Astrobot will win several categories. I'm not sure that there is even a single good sports game that came out this year. So it'll be interesting to see what wins there. And now it seems like they've added a new category for TV and movie adaptations. And then most anticipated, Metroid Prime 4 is still not out yet, apparently. Which you really shouldn't be giving out awards for things being anticipated. That should be a negative thing that you haven't released your game yet, not a positive thing that you've been so successful at getting people overhyped about a game. Then a content creator of the year, and you have a whole list here of people I don't recognize. I probably should take this list and just subscribe to all of those content creators, see what I could learn from them. Yeah, if I wasn't so busy doing so much else, that would be a good idea, just to grin and bear watching what is probably going to be cringy to me content to know what successful YouTubers, video game content creators look like. I assume Counter-Strike 2 will still win Best Esports Game, but who knows. And then esports athletes and esports teams also getting awards. Yeah, that seems like a lot of categories. Does certainly seem like it is going to be more of an event. We haven't gotten to the point yet where hashtag Oscars too long or something like that has happened with the Game Awards. And so, yeah, I think anybody that's going to bother to sit through this event will appreciate that many categories as much as you can appreciate it. And I think the vast majority of people that find things like the Game Awards or the Oscars too long now have the opportunity to not actually watch any of it at all and just look at the winners list the next day in the news. It would be my sincere hope at the Game Awards to see more mid-level and low-level employees in the audience or on stage receiving awards, but I don't expect that to really happen. So we're now at the Gaming on Linux articles, and we're going to probably run into some repetitive stuff. Euro Truck Simulator 2 Greece lands December 4th, so the Greece DLC or Greece spinoff. Vehicle combat shooter Mad Mix is coming out apparently. Here's the story. The Steam Controller 2 is apparently a thing and is being, quote, tooled for mass production, plus a new VR controller. This apparently is a leak. And yeah, we'll see what it really looks like. I definitely think that there's room for a lot more experimentation and revolution in how controllers work and how controllers are held. One of the funny things is, as I'm thinking about Joy-Cons and their waggle motions, is that there's a kind of wood chopping motion you can do twice real fast on my new phone to turn on the flashlight. Where normally I would program the power button to toggle it on when pressed or something like that, but yeah, I'm again trying to use the default built-in stuff. And frankly, if the waggle motion actually works 100% of the time, it's not a terrible way to shake your phone and turn on a flashlight instead of having to fumble to find the button. Android 14 also has the snatched out of your hands function, in which the phone will lock if enabled if somebody steals your phone and just runs away with it. I'm not sure exactly how accurate that works, and if it only works 9 out of 10 times, then there's still a decent chance somebody's going to snatch your phone and it won't automatically lock. Let's see. The NVIDIA stable driver for 550.135 has been released for Linux, and this naming convention is way too high. Yeah. At some point, there needs to be a rethink there. That's way too many versions. Although it does lean heavily, I guess, into the Linux mentality that this may just be the 550th update since NVIDIA had any kind of drivers for their graphics cards in Linux. Miniatures is a short mixture of strange tales. I'm not actually going to check out these games at the moment. Again, these are still not opening because I never programmed them to. Hot Loop is a twin-stick shooter where you fling yourself around using gravity from planets. Yeah, we already talked about Sony looking to acquire Kadokawa. Arcane Wilds is a Western-themed fantasy RTS now on Steam. Yeah, a lot of these are on Gaming on Linux as advertisements for specific games, and I may just eventually find that Gaming on Linux is too much of an advertisement website than compared to other news sites. But then I might be able to just close a bunch of tabs if they're just going to advertise games. I'm going to have to eventually start getting a feel as to whether the recommendations of games are actually good or not, or whether they're just recommending everything. The SteamO LED Limited Edition White and Steam Deck Australia have launched. I think these are slightly older announcements, but maybe not. Still don't really recommend getting the White Limited Edition. There is, on any limited edition product, a danger that quality control may not be that high, and so if all of a sudden all the white ones started to break in a specific spot or fade in a specific spot and discolor, that too could be an annoyance for people who pay the premium. The Direct 3D to Vulkan translation layer DXVK version 2.5.1 has been released, fixing the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition and anisotropic filtering regressions. The unofficial PC port of Zelda Majora's Mask 2 has had a big release out. Some of these we had already talked about. Yeah, these are older stories. OpenRA for the classic real-time strategy games like Red Alert has a new playtest with enhanced visuals and revamped map editor. And then Classic Unreal Tournament and Unreal are now easier to download thanks to old Unreal. This has been updated with a comment from Epic Games saying that Unreal 1 and Unreal Tournament are available on archive.org. Which, let's click on archive.org. Nope, still not loading for me. Inherently, I know at least one podcaster was uploading their videos to archive.org and then serving their videos that way. Which that certainly is a thought. Yeah, I could see myself backing up my YouTube channel. It would be a hassle. I have like over 10,000 videos. I probably have closer to 16,000 videos now. But yeah, if I put it on archive.org, then there might be some safety there. Your YouTube channel getting deleted. You wouldn't be monetized there, but it would be at least a decent backup thought. I'd have to investigate if that's actually doable, whether that would piss off archive.org. First and foremost, we have to see archive.org actually come back up and succeed. It'd be nice if archive.org had a lot more funding too, so it would stick around for a much longer time. Moving on to GameDeveloper.com. Again, none of these stories opened, so I opened them manually. Some of these might be older things. The Splinter Cell movie no longer moving forward. Ruckus Games raising $19 million for Project Bobcat. Embracer attributes its continuous 2024-25 declines to a lack of substantial new releases, which, while I agree with, also is a problem of their own making, in that they acquired way more people than they should have and seem to not really force any of those new people that they acquired to develop games fast enough. The balance clearly is somewhere in the middle there. Had they acquired half as many people and then put funding into those people they acquired to actually make games and release them, that would have been a much better situation. SAG-AFTRA's newest agreement secures protections for video game dub actors. This too may be older news. And frankly, I'm in a rush today, so I'm only going to read the subheadline and move on. Localization agents from non-US made gamers have AI protections and larger voice print and session options. A senator has questioned Valve's commitment to wiping out disturbing and violent extremism on Steam. Quote, it appears Valve has chosen to continue a hands-off type approach to content moderation. I fully agree that is what Valve has done. I fully disagree that there is a significant amount of disturbing or violent content on Steam. Frankly, I think you'd have to go and seek it out, particularly if it's adult porn stuff. You have to go and seek it out, and then it is just going to be a matter of opinion. Do you think the latest Call of Duty is disturbing and violent? I mean, yes, on some level there's violence there. Yes, on some level it might disturb some people, but it's properly age-gated and rated by the ESRB. And frankly, a senator shouldn't be asking to wipe out disturbing and violent content anywhere. A senator should be protecting the Constitution, which they're sworn to uphold, which the freedom of speech and freedom of expression is definitely a high priority in the U.S. Constitution. So this almost certainly is a pro-censorship senator trying to get its hooks into video games, targeting video games. Probably not to actually do anything, but other than to get some news press for themselves. Yeah. But yeah, who knows what's going to happen in the future. We may see a point where even things like Call of Duty are getting more and more censored. Censorship is an extremely slippery slope, and things could go bad very quickly and for a very long time if you're not careful. I'm, of course, all for age appropriateness and wish there were more kids' games, but I am 100% against censorship. Roblox has added more parental controls to its revamped child safety procedures. That's another thing I noticed on the Moto, is it has several different apps that do several different things, but one of them is definitely child controls, and it definitely is also a case now where when you log in originally to a phone, you can make a child account on that phone using your account. And you can have multiple Google accounts on an Android phone now, so definitely seems like a different experience from before. Astrobot and Balertro headline Game Award nominees. This is that story that everybody was talking about, how a South Korean intern saved Valve from a Vivendi lawsuit. This was in 2002. This is part of the 20th anniversary documentary. I imagine a lot of that, though, is also just historical revisionism, and the lawsuit would have probably just dragged out and Valve would have won anyways. But you never know. And it is a more interesting story to have a hero, an individual hero. Although this individual unnamed intern hero doesn't seem like they were really rewarded or even remembered that much. An indie RPG dev thought pennies cut staff after losing project funding. The name of the company is called Thought Pennies. Interesting. It's an interesting title, but it does not read smoothly. Update: Sony is working to acquire FromSoft parent company Kadokawa. SAG-AFTRA doesn't want you to forget about striking workers during the awards series. It's important not to lose sight of the fact that thousands of video game voice and movement performers have been on strike for 116 days. Well, even the very pro-union GameDeveloper.com has really done a poor job of reminding people that they're on strike. Like, they didn't... Maybe they made one article at 100 days, but I'm pretty sure they didn't make an article at 50 days. They definitely aren't doing a weekly reminder that SAG-AFTRA has been on strike for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month. Nothing like that. And there definitely was room to just remind people that they've been on strike. Strikes can go on very long, but it's hard in this digital world of video games to know that there's a strike going on. There isn't really a great way of making a digital picket line. Like, websites themselves can't be picketed. They could be DDoS'd, I guess, but if unions start doing that, that'd probably lead to a lot of legal fights and not be good for unions. But yeah, this is where you can see even fairly pro-union websites like GameDeveloper.com are still really run by capitalists who are anti-union and aren't actively really trying to support the working class. Let's see. Remedy claims self-publishing model will help it think more commercially. I guess that's probably true. Maybe that would make Control 2 a little bit more of a more average style playing game, which just a little dash of it being more approachable would help. I don't want it to become just Call of Duty and become bland and just try to be prod appealing, but I do have to admit that Control 1 had some fairly repetitive gameplay mechanics, and as a game itself was not as fun to play as much as the story was as fun to watch. Let's see. PlayStation finds 2 new execs for its mobile game division. Oliver Courtmanche and Justin Kubiak. They will lead the direction and business partnerships of that. Interesting, because that's not how the story was before. The way this is phrased, Oliver Courtmanche is the head of mobile, whereas Justin Kubiak is the leader of mobile business development and partnerships. Which, boy, is that phrase weird. It really should have been 2 separate stories. PlayStation has this guy as one title and this guy as another title. Just make it 3 sentences so it's actually understandable. Farming Simulator 25 has the series best launch with 2 million copies sold in the opening week. Okay. And then An update here that Reflector Entertainment is laying off 18% of its workforce. But yeah, that's a big number, and I suppose when you're talking 18% of humans, at the very least that means at least 18 people are being laid off. You don't get that number any other way, because you can't go into fractions. Alright, and then that's going to bring us to all the new games on Steam. And let's burn through this. I'm running a little late today, but really the only reason I'm running late is just my own desire to avoid traffic. So it's not that big of a deal. I'm finding that I'm having to drive around more, and I'm figuring out slowly the best times to drive around to avoid the most amount of traffic. I was just saying a few weeks ago, it's been a long time since I've seen a hunting simulation game. There really should be, if not every year, every couple of years, a new hunting game. I know hunting isn't super popular these days. It is really previous generations. And in fairness, a lot of games have hunting mechanics but don't make that their default experience. Which, that is an interesting question. Certainly, are there games out there like Raft where you can just fish and not have to do any of the crafting or anything else? And I don't think they really are designed that way. If you are going to have a fishing mechanic, you're going to probably have other mechanics you have to focus on. Also, if you're going to have a hunting mechanic like the Tomb Raider reboot, you're going to have a lot of other content that you also have to deal with. Yeah. There is almost an argument, and I kind of don't want to see this kind of bifurcation happening in games, but there is an argument to have spin-off games of things like Far Cry or the Tomb Raider reboot or Raft if they have decent hunting and fishing mechanics where that is all you do. Ryzen Zero Dawn, you're hunting robot animals. Now, it is also, I think, worth pointing out that the game with Hunter in the name, Monster Hunter as a series, still really not a proper hunting style game that would feel like real world hunting. They've polished their experience to be very much a action fantasy hunting experience. And so if there was somebody that liked to hunt deer, they're not going to feel like they're hunting deer in Monster Hunter when they're hunting dragons. Yeah, even things like Raft would probably be a little too cartoony for fishing fans. So you're inherently also needing to make hyper-realistic graphics to make a hunting game or fishing game. And again, to wrap up, those are the kind of games that frankly my grandfather would be more interested in playing than current generations of people. Jungle Gym. I don't think this is an old game. I think this is a brand new game. Microsoft Flight Simulator, overwhelmingly negative, 17% due to launch issues. It is also very possible you would never convince newer generations to be too into hunting. It's too slow of an activity, frankly. It's not the kind of activity that you can do by listening to podcasts or multitasking or playing on your phone. So yeah. There's of course also major ickiness and moral implications on hunting animals that most people don't want to do. And in fairness, we are not too far away from just full-on beef and other kinds of meat being grown in vats instead of being harvested off of animals, at which point a lot of animals may be more balanced naturally in a cycle of life that does not involve human interference and population control. There could be a point, for instance in deer, that straight up areas just poison one generation of deer down to being almost non-existent, almost extinct, or they throw in a couple of wolves into an area and then the wolves eat all of the deer very quickly and regain a balance. Yeah, people aren't really ranching deer anyways. It'll be more of just a general feeling of cows going away, because if we're like right now in the United States, I hear there's way too much milk being produced, so that there is a lot of room to get rid of cows. If we had chickens grown in vat, chicken meat grown in vats, there's going to be very little reason to have that anywhere as many chickens as there are. And it may become trivial at some distant point in the future to grow even more rare meat like foie gras and things like that in a vat. The oceans, more than even lands, probably are low on fish, so if we could stop fishing, significantly reduce the amount of fishing in the oceans, that probably would be a good thing too. Although a lot of what I'm rambling about right now is also an argument that, oh, who wants to work in a call center in a video game? Yeah. Of all the terrible simulations you can think of, call center or cancer ward would be about the two worst simulation games I could think of. Yeah, anyways, yeah, it might actually be a return to simulated hunting though, if all of a sudden real animal hunting is just not a thing, which I doubt it would be ever fully outlawed or anything like that, but it may just stop being a thing people do at all. They barely do it now. Anyways, that's it for my stream and my ramble. Yeah, 0 drop frames. I turned up all the quality. I will check the quality. There is an insignificant number of frames due to rendering and encoding lag that were dropped, 0.0% overall, so I don't consider that an issue. Yep. And so I'm just gonna go back to my house cleaning grind, as it were. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.